Welcome back to In His Mind. I want to go out and start off by saying that this is a very interesting video that is on a topic that I wish was talked more about, which is universal truth. So overall, everything that is being said is going to revolve around that in some way, shape, or form. However, the way it all starts off is with someone else who I'm just going to nickname M. Keep it simple. The conversation starts off somewhere else and it devolves into quite a few different sub points. So I'm going to try to do my best to summarize everything up and to keep it short and simple. Overall, I want to say, while this individual called M, for short, they do not believe in multiple truths, but in one universal truth, that they also believe that biases are wrong, like off, like something along the lines of that, not like immoral or bad. I think they used the word bad, but they didn't mean it in immoral or ethical sense, kind of bad. So yeah. So either way, I don't buy the idea of multiple truths. Yeah, I think we ended up on agreeing to disagree on some different points. Overall, I'm just going to say that I don't believe that there is a universal truth simply because of free will and individuality. Once I began to understand that, I began to understand why things can't really fall under this whole universal aspect, is because everyone is so different. We take this stuff personal. And for those who don't take it personal, it's likely they do not care, or they believe it does not matter at all. So that's up to them. And automatically, right off the bat, people who just simply say that it doesn't matter to them, or it's not important overall, that automatically kind of proves that universal truth is not something that is universal outright. Now, I believe there are universal constants, oxygen, and the fact that there is ground to walk on, like gravity. Like, there are rules in play here that will not change ever. It's scientific too. Like there's a lot in play that just will not change. It will just always be the same, no matter if you disagree or agree with it. But something personal and something that is on a different level that is not physical, you could say metaphysical, you could say religious, spiritual. There's a whole different, quite a few words you can use to describe this stuff. But either way, if it's not physical, you're going to have to approach it in a way that is understandable, regardless. And this person made the analogy of a broken clock. Being right twice a day doesn't mean that a broken clock is a good timepiece. And I was like, that's not exactly the best analogy to use here. And you're trying to compare something physical to something that's not physical. Or, at the very least, something that's not observable. Something observable to something that is not observable. Because foundations, biases, are something that you build upon and that you use, but they're not observable in the sense that a broken clock is. And they talked about, pretty much right after that, is things should be logically considered in an unbiased manner because that is a better path to discovering truth. A bias will cause you to overlook things and therefore reduce potential paths to truth in favor of falsehoods believed out of bias. So, and right there, things should be logically considered, quote unquote. I'm like, hold up. First off, men and women think as well as see things differently, and this is something that can be understood in a general sense. Just because both sexes understand and value, like there are some commonalities between those of one sex, no matter where you look at it, individuality included. However, as a whole, men tend to lean towards what is logical, and women tend to lean towards what is emotional. And this is something that is observable through interactions or whatever. Either way, there is quite a bit that should be approached logically, that's for sure. Now, being unbiased is definitely needed in quite a few areas. But being biased is not necessarily something that is wrong, as long as you make it transparent and you say, this is where I stand upon when you're approaching certain things. So, yeah. Now, to discovering a universal truth, you need to be unbiased. I can actually understand that. I just don't think there is one truth out there. Now, in the sense for Christianity, I understand some people have said that there's a lot that leads to Jesus. And I can understand as well as accept that. I believe that, after all. I mean, I'm a Christian. I'm a Taoist Christian. I want to emphasize that I believe the path is incredibly important. So when I say that many paths leading to Jesus is something that I can understand, that is something I believe to be important. The conversation that I had with this Mormon elder this past Thursday leads me to believe that the path to Jesus doesn't matter as much to others. And that's fine. That's personal. How they view things is generally like how they view things and what they stand upon is usually passed upon to them by others or by something else, like the scripture that they believe in reading. Now, others can be developed over time through trial, error, through consequences, all that sort of thing. However, that being said, usually by the time you get to be as old as the man who I talked to, you're going to be more solidified. You're going to be more inflexible, so to speak. You're not going to be. You're gonna be very singular in that sense. Like this is what you've chosen. That plays a part, but that does change the narrative and the topic a little bit. So moving on. A bias will cause you to overlook things and therefore reduce potential paths to truth in favor of falsehoods believed out of bias. There's a lot to say there, but in short, that is somewhat true. A bias can cause you to overlook things, but reducing potential paths is something that could be for the better, just because distractions, going down the wrong path to begin with, like there's a lot there. Going down one path is better in the sense that you're not going to be struggling with distractions. That's for sure. So, reducing potential paths, possibly the correct paths, in favor of falsehoods is also something that needs to be mentioned. You don't want to be reducing what is good or right for you because you're believing lies. That's definitely true. So, on that, I can agree. Now, this individual is saying that having a bias is a bad foundation and that having evidence is a good foundation. And I'm just like, why not have both? Why does it have to be one or the other? Or rather, why is one bad but the other not? Yeah. So the actual point about things should be logically considered was definitely a good point for sure. Let me see here. You can be biased towards right things and biased towards wrong things, which is personal, and everyone is shaped by nature. They're shaped. The whole argument of nature versus nurture falls directly into here, because we grow in a couple of areas, and one of them is by how we're influenced. So that does matter. What's in our life will directly impact us one way or the other. And it will affect our growth and maturity too. And could be responsible for some changes in our lives as well. So yeah, they did explain there as far as the whole not, I didn't say having a bias was inherently evil, just said it was inherently bad. Not good for rationality. And I was like, all right, cool. Yeah. All right. Regardless of how men and women and people are structured, having a bias is not good for rationality, and people can learn to look past them in favor of actual logic. This is stuff that I can agree with, and to an extent I do agree. I just don't think eliminating one for the sake of the other is the right move to make. That's personal, though. Now, if you're working a job that requires you to be rational, and you have to remove it, that's probably not good. Now, you flip that around, you have a job where you have to remove all rationality. I'm not sure that's good either. I think it's good to have a little bit of both. I'm trying to figure out how to link the 2 points together here. It's good to have structure, and removing structure from your life is usually a bad thing. This person, M, believes that bias is not a good structure to have in your life, or to build off of, or to include, or pretty much all above. The fact that people have them naturally doesn't invalidate that they're bad paths to the truth. And people can learn to look past them in favor of actual logic. Yeah. He's talking about bias. Oh man. Some of the stuff just does not make much sense. I'm trying. The fact that the people have them naturally doesn't invalidate that they're bad paths. Yeah, anyway, moving on. Having bias, I don't think, is bad. It can invalidate some things, and yes, there can be bad paths that we get on, but how we get on these bad paths is going to be up for speculation, and it's very personal. All right. Just because you believe something doesn't make it true. There's actual reality out there, and that is what is universally true, reality. And I'm like, okay, there's an argument to be made there about perception being reality. How you see things is what they really are, which is why certain things should be very careful about. You should be very careful about when being around them or having them be a part of your life. Horror movies, for example. It could be horror movies of any kind, serial killers, possessions, because it seems like Hollywood and quite a few people love these possession movies. I do not view them because I am affected by them in ways that, I mean, I've seen 2 demon possessions, so I don't really feel like I need any more of that in my life, and it's definitely not how Hollywood portrays it. But I will use that as an example because anything supernatural that goes above and beyond zombies, I stay away from. It's pointless. To me, it's pointless. It's not needed. It does more harm than good. So, overall, yeah, I just don't believe reality is in one way, shape, or form. Now, I do believe reality is, there are some other dimensions out there outside of what the 3 dimensions that we know of. I believe that the spiritual realm does play a part of this. I believe that there are some things that cannot be explained or even observed in the physical reality. So this is a slight branch off of the main topic here about, universal truth and how reality fits into this. Wrapping your head around this can take some time. If you're trying to find out what comports with reality, having a bias will blind you to potential truths. Slightly going against what they were saying before about their, not about this, about M not believing in potential truths, multiple truths, excuse me. Maybe M is worried about being blinded or having options limited. I'm wondering about that. I know having options limited can be a bad thing, but also it can be a good thing because you're removing distractions from your life, you're simplifying, your direction, your path, all of that. There's a lot that's being simplified when you take out multiple different paths. If you're trying to find out what comports reality, you should look beyond those biases in favor of actual evidence. Evidence is good. Yeah, definitely. All right. When I say I disagree with this, I do try to state where I agree and where I disagree, as well as other things that would portray and matter. Other things that would matter that I have to portray that ties in with the subject. So, this is quite the deep topic in and of itself about universal truths, like plain and simple. So, if they or anyone else wants to say that I clearly do not know what a bias is, that's fine, whatever. I don't feel the need to go all scientific and break it down to the core just to, say, hey, I know what this is, blah, blah, blah. That's fine, whatever. So, the last part here is, or one of the last few parts is that was mentioned is nothing gets in the way of there being one truth. And I'm just like, really? Okay. Trauma, tragedy, all this stuff can actually shape up your view and shake you out of what you believe. There's many people who have been changed because of tragedy that has taken, the loss of a loved one, the loss of private property, of their livelihood, of their limbs, being deployed and getting hit by a roadside bomb, for example, or just getting into a car accident in general. Like, this stuff matters. And I want to say that for what is true, what is factual, there's nothing that gets in the way of those. But a universal truth, I've already listed before, individuality and free will, I largely believe, do get in the way of there being one truth. Now, as far as constants go, that also plays a factor in this. Now, they explain, and this is very interesting because when it comes down to like bias, when it comes down to truth, I believe me and M believe things and define them differently. And they explain here a bias is an unfair inclination towards a particular belief. I don't see that at all. I understand it, but I don't see that. I do not believe that at all. And then when I did ask about individuality and free will, they said they didn't know, to be honest. Now, they do state that, but people having free will doesn't mean that there are multiple truths. Truth is absolute, and by truth, I mean what comports with reality. Slightly going back with what was said before. So, yeah. Let me see here. Me bringing the part about oxygen as a constant that remains in play was in response to this person using oxygen exists as being a universal truth. And I'm like, not trying to correct you here, but I don't see that as a universal truth, but as a universal constant. It's just something that doesn't ever change. It's there, it exists, boom, it'll never be taken away. So yes, you can't bend what is in reality, but reality itself can bend depending upon what all has happened, and, well, your perception does change things. People have disorders, people have issues where they just don't see things, they don't interpret things the same way as you, me, and anyone else. There's a lot that simply can just say, hey, you're having a, panic attacks. I'm trying to think of some of these disorders and stuff, but I can't think of anything. But there are out there where it will impact their, their perception, their reality, all of it. Soldiers, PTSD, we struggle through life coming back trying to get the war out of our head, the consequences, the pain, all of this stuff, all this garbage. And for us, the way we see things and reality is permanently changed after our deployments. So that is reality for us as a veteran. So yeah, I agree. You can't bend reality for sure. All right. So you list a couple other things as far as being, I'm not going to go down this other stuff, but it is kind of important. Anyway, just want to bring this up because this was a very interesting but long conversation about universal truth and biases. And it's just some very interesting stuff here. Now, the last part I think was being brought up about drugs, and I'm just like, yeah, that can change your perception of reality, but in itself doesn't change reality. So yeah, that's it. I'd like to hear what you all think, and just comment below. Now, since all this stuff is just done in my spare time and for free, I don't ask for donations. I don't do donations. But if I was to get enough of a following, that's something I would probably ask about, simply so I could pay others for interviews and spend time, talking about some of the stuff here, because it's good stuff. But it all depends. It remains to be seen whether or not I can get enough people interested and willing to donate, so I could pay for people to talk to, and basically for their time and for better quality videos. Because as it is, I'm just simply slapping an intro and an outro when possible for these longer videos, and I'm just using my iPhone to record the other simple conversations. All right, until next time.